My caregiver hit me when no one was looking and no one believed me. So I let the bruises speak for me. My name is Delilah Moore. I'm 76 years old. And for 3 months I was beaten, humiliated, and gaslit in my own home by the woman my daughter hired to take care of me. Every time I spoke up, they told me I was confused, that it was the stroke talking, that I was imagining things. But I wasn't confused. I wasn't helpless. And by the time they realized the truth, it was already too late. Before I begin, thank you for listening to my story. Let me know in the comments where and what time you're tuning in from. Means more than you know. It reminds me that I'm not alone in this. And if you'd like to share your story with me, feel free to email it. I'll drop my email in the description below. Now let me tell you what really happened. I knew something was wrong the second my daughter, Rhonda Wells, pulled out of the driveway. She had just dropped off Kayla Sims, the new caregiver she hired to help around the house while I recovered from my stroke. Rhonda's tone had been cheerful like always. "Kayla's highly recommended, Mama," she said. "She's worked with elderly stroke patients, knows how to handle medications, and she even volunteered with Meals on Wheels." I smiled, nodded, and watched her drive off with a wave. But the moment her car disappeared, everything changed. Kayla, a woman in her early 40s with glossy braids and long painted nails, dropped the smile she'd been wearing for Rhonda like a mask hitting the floor. She exhaled loudly, rolled her eyes, and walked right past me, bumping my shoulder hard enough to jolt my balance. I stood there with my walker, gripping the handles as if I had imagined it. But deep down my stomach had already twisted. She didn't say a word, just stomped into the kitchen and started banging cabinets. The woman Rhonda thought was a compassionate professional had flipped like a switch. I stayed silent. At 76 years old, I'd learned how to read people quick, and this woman was not safe. My name is Delilah Moore. I've lived in this house since the 80s. My late husband, Harold, and I raised our only daughter here, planted those magnolias out front, built every corner with our own hands. A few months ago I had a minor stroke. Nothing too dramatic, but enough to slow me down. Rhonda, bless her, meant well. She works full-time and has 2 kids, so she couldn't be here every day. That's why she hired Kayla. But what Rhonda didn't realize was that the woman she invited into my home was not a helper. She was a predator. The signs came quick. At first, Kayla ignored me when I asked for water or help reaching something. She left me waiting in the bathroom for nearly 20 minutes once. I told Rhonda about that, but she brushed it off. "Maybe she didn't hear you, Mama. You know your voice gets soft sometimes." Then came the first real blow. It was the second week. I asked Kayla to move my pill organizer closer while I was sitting in the den. She turned to me slowly, narrowed her eyes, and said, "You're not going to last long if you keep acting helpless." Then she slapped the back of my shoulder. Not hard enough to leave a mark, but hard enough to sting. I gasped. She smiled. "You'll be fine," she said, and walked off. That night I called Rhonda again. I told her exactly what happened. Her voice sounded tired. "Mama, are you sure? You've been having those dizzy spells and you said your shoulder hurt earlier this week. Maybe it's from the fall last month." "I didn't fall," I said, gripping the phone tighter. "She hit me." "Mama," Rhonda said gently, "you've been paranoid since the stroke. I think we might need to talk to the doctor about adjusting your meds." That broke something inside me. Rhonda didn't mean harm. I knew that. But it's easier to believe a stranger is professional than to admit your own mother might be suffering right under your nose. And in that moment I realized something terrifying. No one was coming to help me. Would you let this happen to your own mama? The next day, Kayla served me cold oatmeal and left the tray on my lap for 3 hours. I couldn't get up. My arms cramped. When I finally asked her to take it, she said, "Not my fault. You're too lazy to move." Later that evening, while I sat by the window, she walked by and muttered under her breath, "Old people are just practice corpses." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My voice had gone somewhere I couldn't reach. But I wasn't broken. I was planning. The next morning, I waited until she went outside for a smoke. Then I pushed myself down the hall to the room Harold used as his sewing and tools closet. I hadn't opened that drawer in years, but I knew what I was looking for. It was still there. Harold's old handheld tape recorder. I popped in 2 AA batteries from the junk drawer and tested it. The sound was scratchy but clear. I felt something cold and certain settle in my chest. If no one would believe me, I'd make them listen. I started slow. I hid the recorder in a folded towel in the bathroom, behind a curtain rod in the den, under the couch pillow where I sat each evening. Each time Kayla came at me, when she slapped my wrist for talking too slow, when she yanked my walker out of reach so I'd have to crawl to the bathroom, when she hissed that she hoped I'd just fall already, I recorded it. Then I started keeping a notebook. I wrote down the time, the room, the recorder location, and what happened. My handwriting shook. My fingers ached. But every bruise came with a number. Every insult came with a tape. I didn't flinch anymore. I let her believe I was sinking. I let my eyes dull, let my voice weaken. And in that silence she grew bolder, complacent. One evening she grabbed my chin hard and said, "I could shove you down the stairs and say you tripped. You'd believe it yourself in a week." I got that one clear as day, the hiss, the laugh, the soft thud of her walking away. That night, as I sat in the dark, the shoebox under my bed felt like the heaviest thing in the house. It held all the tapes, all the truth. My daughter thought I was confused. My caregiver thought I was helpless. But I was neither. I was just waiting for the right time. A week passed. By now I had over a dozen tapes and a notebook so full the pages curled at the corners. Every time Kayla Sims, the woman my daughter Rhonda had hired to care for me, insulted me, shoved me, or slapped me, I had it. Audio, dates, everything. But I needed more than proof. I needed the moment that would force everyone to see what I already knew. The moment she couldn't talk her way out of. Kayla had grown cocky, too cocky. She thought I was shrinking. That the way I sat quiet or looked down meant she had one. But really I was listening, counting steps, studying rhythms. I knew how long it took her to shower, how she left her phone in the kitchen when she went outside to smoke. I knew she never checked under the sink, and that she always forgot about the baby monitor camera Rhonda installed last year when she thought I might fall getting to the bathroom. I covered it with a towel back then. Now I was thinking about plugging it back in. One morning while Kayla was napping in the recliner. Yes, my recliner. I made my way to the kitchen. My hip ached, but I moved quiet. I reached for the outlet behind the microwave, slid the cord for the baby monitor into the socket, and aimed it across the living room. Then I covered the blinking light with a tiny strip of black tape. She'd never notice. That day, she was worse than usual. She threw my lunch plate down so hard the peas bounced off the floor. When I asked her to pick them up, she told me, "Lick 'em up like a dog if you want them." Later, when she walked by the hallway, she pushed my walker just enough to send me staggering against the wall. She didn't care if I bruised. She wanted me to bruise. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. My shoulder throbbed where she'd pinched me earlier. But my mind was sharp. My body hurt, but my spirit had flint in it now. I knew I couldn't do this much longer. I was playing weak, but the truth was I was weak. I needed to act while I still had strength left. The next morning I made her coffee just like she liked it. Extra sugar, little cream. She looked at me sideways and said, "You feeling obedient today?" I smiled. That same brittle smile she used to give Rhonda when she was pretending to be someone else. "Just feeling grateful," I said. She laughed. "Maybe I knocked the sense back into you." Later, when she went outside to talk on her phone, I went straight to the sewing room and pulled the tapes. I loaded the ones from the past week into a little floral makeup bag. Then I tucked the notebook in beside them. Rhonda was coming that afternoon just for a check-in. She said she just felt like stopping by. God must have whispered something. When Rhonda arrived, Kayla switched into performance mode, smiling. She even offered to make tea. Rhonda beamed like a proud parent. "She's been so good with you, hasn't she, Mama?" I didn't respond right away. I looked Kayla in the eye. Her gaze flickered just for a second. "Why don't we sit in the den?" I said. We moved slowly. I waited for Kayla to step away. Then I pulled the makeup bag from behind the throw pillow and handed it to Rhonda. "What's this?" she asked. "Evidence," I said. "Of what?" "Everything you didn't believe." She gave a confused smile, then opened the bag and pulled out the tapes. "Cassette tapes?" she asked. "And a notebook. Match the times. Play them." Rhonda glanced around. "Where's Kayla?" "On the porch. On the phone. She'll be back in 5 minutes." Rhonda opened the notebook and scanned the top page. The date, the time, then the words, "Old people are just practice corpses." She froze. "I'm not confused, Rhonda," I said softly. She looked up. Her eyes darted to the hallway, then back to me. You recorded her? I nodded. I had to. She didn't speak for a full minute. Then she pulled out her phone and opened the voice memo app. She held a cassette up to it, pressed play on the recorder, and let the hiss fill the room. Then Kayla's voice came through, clear as a bell. I ought to push you down the stairs and tell your daughter you rolled. Rhonda dropped the recorder like it burned her. Mama, I held up a hand. Don't apologize yet. She's coming back in 3 minutes. What we do next is your decision. Rhonda looked pale. She started pacing. Then she nodded slowly. We'll get the police. You'll be okay. I swear. She can't know. Not yet. I understand. When Kayla came back inside, I was back in my seat. Rhonda smiled tight and thanked her for the tea. They made small talk. Rhonda asked her to go out and grab a few things from the store. Milk, crackers, paper towels. Kayla, still smug and unaware, grabbed her purse and left. The door hadn't even clicked shut before Rhonda picked up her phone and started dialing. Who are you calling? I asked. A detective I know, she said. From work. He's a good man. His name's Lionel Briggs. I exhaled for the first time all day, because for the first time in weeks I wasn't alone anymore. I was believed. If you think I deserved better, write mother in the comments. If not, write one. But be honest. 3 months later, I sat on a wooden bench in the back of a quiet courtroom, watching Kayla Sims stand before the judge in handcuffs. She wore the same bland, county-issued shirt I'd seen in the news, her hair pulled back tightly, her expression flat. Gone was the woman who used to smirk down at me as she hurled my plate to the floor. Gone was the voice that whispered threats in the hallway, that yanked my walker, that told me no one would believe me. All that was left now was silence. She didn't fight the charges. She didn't speak. Her attorney did all the talking, murmuring phrases like first-time offense and emotional pressure. But the evidence was too strong. The judge handed down the sentence without hesitation. 5 years suspended license, permanent placement on the state elder abuse registry. No contact with the victim. No employment in any care-related capacity. Again, I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you," to no one in particular. Afterward, Rhonda took my hand and helped me down the courthouse steps. You okay? She asked. I'm not broken, I said. Just different now. 2 weeks later, we got a letter from the agency that had referred Kayla. They were settling out of court to avoid a larger suit. My home would be fully renovated for accessibility. New floors, widened doorways, a walk-in tub, railings on the porch. Everything paid for. It wouldn't erase what happened, but it meant I wouldn't have to live with old injuries in an old house that didn't fit me anymore. I started sleeping better. Not always, but better. Naomi stayed on as my caregiver, and her calm presence gave the house a new rhythm. She spoke softly, asked permission before touching anything, and made a point to tell me what she was doing every step, every time. I'm just adjusting your pillow, Ms. Moore, she'd say. Or, would you like me to sit with you a while? I always said yes. But the quiet I loved most came in the afternoons. That's when I started speaking again, not just to Naomi or Rhonda, but to others. Rhonda signed us up to speak at a local elder care awareness event. I was hesitant at first. What would I say? What if no one believed me again? But then I stood in front of that room, half full of adult children, caregivers, and a few women in wheelchairs. And I told my story. I told them about the bruises, the silence, the dismissals, the tape recorder. The night I stopped begging to be believed and started collecting proof. I watched eyes widen. I saw tears fall. I heard gasps when I said the words. She told me she could push me down the stairs and say I slipped. After the event, a woman approached me with shaking hands. My mom is going through the same thing, she said. She keeps saying her nurse is cruel. We thought maybe it was the dementia. Believe her, I said. Even if she stumbles over the words, believe her. That night, I sat on my front porch with a cup of tea and a small blanket draped over my legs. Rhonda sat beside me, quiet. She didn't talk as much anymore. She'd learned that sometimes silence said more. I never thought we'd be here, she whispered. 3 months ago, I thought you were just struggling. I'm sorry it took me so long to see. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But I won't forget. She nodded. We sat like that for a long while, watching the street, listening to the wind. Now, every week I meet with a group of women at the senior center. We talk about the things no one wants to say out loud. Neglect, bruises, fear. And more I see women coming in not just to talk, but to take notes, to act. And every time I tell my story, I remember the first night I turned on that recorder. How scared I was, how desperate. But not anymore. Because now my story lives outside of me. It lives in the courtroom records, in the settlement, in the memory of that tape hiss followed by the sound of my own small voice saying, "Stop." One evening after a group meeting, I returned home and turned off all the lights. I sat in my recliner, the same one where I used to pray no one would hit me again, and listened. There were no footsteps, no curses, no threats. Only the hum of my refrigerator, the distant chirp of crickets, and the deep, long silence I had earned. Not empty, not afraid, just peace. Share this with someone who needs a reminder. Silence doesn't mean weakness. And please like, comment, and subscribe, because stories like mine deserve to be heard.